to this morning's FinTech in the Northeast session. My name's Stuart Lynn and I'm the chair of this session, and I'm joined today by three people. James Thwaites from Whitecap Consulting, who's an associate director. And James is going to share with us an overview of the latest stats on the Northeast's FinTech sector. You might have heard of Whitecap before. They did a massive piece of research prior to COVID on the state of the Northeast FinTech, and we'll get an update on that today. I'm also joined by Richard Sylvester from Sage. Richard's product manager for the payments business within Sage. And Richard's going to talk to us about some of the innovations that are going on in Sage right now around the FinTech agenda. And also, hopefully, we'll be joined by Karen Elliott. Karen is an associate professor at Newcastle University Business School, but looks like she's having a few connection problems this morning. But hopefully, Karen will join us to talk to us about the new UK Fin network that's been established nationwide. For me, I'm a director on the board of Newcastle Building Society and Newcastle Strategic Solutions, and also a chair of Sub 10, a business that specialises in compliance training for and education. Okay, so to get us going, I'm going to hand over to James now, who's going to take us through this research. Any questions that you have along the way, just pop them into the box and we'll take them as we go. James.
Yeah, sure. So thank you very much, Stuart. So some of you may already know me. I'm Associate Director for Whitecap in the Northeast, which means I'm their rep for the Northeast, but I work around the UK on various commercial strategy projects. Really interesting role, love it. And one of the things that Whitecap does, about half our business is involved in FinTech strategy, whether it's in ecosystems or working for FinTechs or even working for investment houses looking to invest in FinTech. So it runs through us like stick a Blackpool Rock FinTech. Okay, so some interesting stats and some data and some reflection. I think you'll find it good. Okay, so in 2019, it was towards the end of 2019, just before 2020, we published a report into the FinTech ecosystem of the Northeast. And I guess at the time, this raised awareness that the Northeast did indeed have a FinTech ecosystem. Now, for those of you not aware of what FinTech actually is, it's a definition of just digitization of financial services. And there's no actual definition of it really, but this is probably the closest you get. If you look at the FinTech sector in the purple, it's established FinTechs and financial services, startups and scale-ups, and then the tech companies that provide services to essentially mainly the established FinTech and FS players. So I would say this project had a range of recommendations. I'm not too sure how many were implemented, but it put a shining candle. The Northeast did have a FinTech industry, and that's really good. And a bit of a quote from British Business Bank there. Now, why FinTech? So it's often, we've got Wayne here who's for FinTech, and people ask why FinTech? Well, it's a couple of things we picked out very quickly. FinTech's usually very independent and ideal for VC investment, and their exit values are enormous based on things like EBITDA, profit, and customer goodwill. So if you looked a few years ago, and I purposely picked this out from the data feed into that project, around 30% of all VC in the UK it was around FinTech. So companies were seeing a great way to build FinTechs, and investment houses were seeing a great way to make money from the high exit values of FinTech. So this is it's the top of the pyramid in terms of venture capital, and the data is even better now, but it's just reflecting back a few years ago. So how we managed to get interest and why people were interested. So we're working on a new project, which is crowdfunded, and it's a little bit unusual to crowdfund amongst a range of stakeholders, but not in the Northeast context. In other regions around the UK, the combined authorities, regional authorities actually direct fund this work, but the Northeast is a bit fragmented. So we bring the people together in a crowdfunded solution, and I think it probably works better because it means people have got there's multiple stakeholders with a vested interests, and they just make sure that there's congruence and alignment in the work. So it's really, really good to work with different people, different viewpoints, and have lots of input. So what are the key emerging themes from the current research project since 2019? So the first is that HM Treasury, and through Ron Khalifa, ex-CEO of WorldPay, did a report into how to build the regional ecosystems outside of the super hub of London. And when we were consulted on that, we said that, look, there's lots going on in Newcastle, Durham. It's punches above its weight. And I think that through that and other feedback and external feedback through Deloitte, Newcastle and Durham was highlighted as an emerging fintech cluster, which is quite good considering the size of the region, with strengths in banking, payment, and wealth tech. That's on the right. So since 2019, what's happened? I guess there's huge growth and positive sentiment. The growth's been tech-led rather than FS-led. You can see the highlights. There's a bunch of more startups and scale-ups. Inward investment team can pat themselves on the back from doing a great job in fintech and tech. It's worked in the Northeast. Companies have come and landed here, taken their bases out of London or just relocated from foreign direct investment. Universities are really reactive, very different, a little bit disconnected, can connect up more. And we've seen a big increase in tech consultancies, both growth within existing companies in the Northeast, such as Opencast, and incoming companies like ThoughtWorks, Credera, BGSS, really building the tech and fintech ecosystem, especially servicing the larger financial services companies in this context. So let's have a look at some of the data. So this is the data for financial services. And if you look at the workforce, financial services as a sector, generically in decline due to improved automation, but the Northeast has got a slight level of renaissance and slight level of stability. Not a huge workforce, but we've seen people like Virgin Money. We've seen other people come into the region. Newcastle Strategic Solutions and Newcastle Building Society expand. You're seeing job stability in the Northeast compared to the regions. We're top of the tree, even though we're fairly small, which is quite interesting. In terms of fintech workforce, the Northeast workforce is the smallest but the largest growing of the small ones, and you can see that on the map to the right. So if you look at the bottom end, the group that the Northeast is in compared to the regions is in the same group as Wales and Northern Ireland, and that group, Wales and Northern Ireland, we're outstripping them in terms of growth. If you look above the two lines above Leeds and East Midlands, I mean, in terms of Leeds, the Northeast is going to be very difficult to compete in terms of their critical mass in financial services and fintech. But it gives you a bit of an idea that the Northeast is buoyant. And if you look at the top level data, since 2019, there's been a 50% growth in GVA and workforce. We'll extrapolate and pull that data out in more detail when we publish the final report in September. Huge growth in the number of startups and scale-ups, and huge growth in the number of startups and scale-ups per capita. So the data surrounding should the region invest in a fintech strategy or a hub to bolster and build upon this growth, it's a resounding yes from the data. So this is the 2022 ecosystem draft. It's very much work in progress. There might be more companies, but it comes to life when you compare it versus 2019. So if you're looking at the fintech sector, you're particularly looking at the Northeast and East. You can see that tech companies in the Northeast has grown substantially. And you can see the substantial different number of brands involved in actual startups and scale-ups in fintech in the Northeast. So this is probably the takeout slide from the whole deck. And I think it's worth just pondering on that, especially the east side of the map, which is really cool. Everything else is pretty much stable. A few more financial services jobs, but probably pick out that in the tech companies on the right-hand side, they've grown in terms of size as well. So existing players that have grown as well as new entrants. And I guess just to finish it off really is what do you think? What do you think about the Northeast FinTech strategy? What do you think is important that we should concentrate on going forward? What are the themes that we should be pursuing? And I'll leave you on there. Back to Stuart to hand over to any questions or over to Richard.
Yeah, I think thanks for that, James. It's really insightful information. If anybody has got any questions, then shout them out. I'll save a few till the end if that's okay, James. But I wondered, Richard, if you could just tell us a little bit about what Sage is doing in terms of innovation in fintech space. Obviously, a lot of those new startup businesses are innovating like crazy to try and gain traction. But let's hear from our big player, Sage. I think you might be on mute, Richard.
There we go. I think I got muted when the slides went up. Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah.
Perfect. Right, if I share my screen.
Oh, hi, Karen. Glad to see you made it in.
Yeah, I just had a few problems logging in. Sorry.
That's okay. Right, we see that, Richard. Must be a set. I wonder, Richard, if we can just well, maybe pick up Karen whilst you're trying to sort that out. Karen, I think, yeah, you're there. So Karen, just while Richard's trying to sort out his technical issue, obviously I introduced you before, Associate Professor at Newcastle University Business School. You've been flying the flag for FinTech for as long as I can remember for the Northeast. And really when I pitched it at the start, there's this new network that's been created, the UK Fin network. I wonder if you could share a little bit about that and then just give us your views on potentially what you saw on the presentation from James, please.
Yes, well, I've been working with James for several years on the prior report and on this current one. And the UK Fin network, what that is, we won 2.5 million from the EPSRC, which is the Engineering, Physics and Science Research Council, because they've realised that in order for the country, in line with the government's desires to make us number one for fintech in the world, essentially, we also need to have academics and industry connecting better. In my background, coming from industry and then going into academia, that's always been one of my passions, as you know. So I'll, together with the computer science department, as we've done for previous pieces of work to get funding, we applied and we're actually leading the UK Fin network, which was quite competitive. There were several bids, as James knows, went in across the UK, but our bid succeeded. So what that means is that starting from September the 1st, we'll be bringing together a registry of academics and companies that are working in the fintech space. And because I've been working across the national fintech network and speaking to Ireland as well, we can gather a really nice database of who's working in fintech and what aspects of fintech, as James put up, whether it's payments, insurance, etc. And we do sort of a matching series. And then rather than it being a traditional research project, it will be that we will be custodians of money. So about 1.2 million to give out to various projects, co-created projects. So these will be small feasibility studies or agile sprints or larger impact studies going up to about 100,000 per grant. And that will be decided not by us as academics, but by an independent board who've been appointed to sort of review the bids coming in, and then they'll be awarded. So there'll be a lot more going up over the summer. A platform will be built so everybody can get insights into what we're doing. But that is open to people across the country because Newcastle have partnered with Edinburgh, Imperial College and Cardiff universities in the bid. So we've got academics across the world doing that, across the nation doing that. And what it'll mean is that we can actually start to break down some of the wicked problems we've got working between industry and academia, understand them, and start to make inroads to ensure that we're actually getting the knowledge from academia and from industry working better together. Because the years that I've been in academia, that's one of been my big problems, is getting to understand how we work in each other's space and then how we can come together to produce something that's going to have true impact and push industry and academia forward, because we don't do it enough because of respective objectives in those worlds. But the research councils have listened and decided that is one way they need to go. So it backs up what James is doing. I've done a lot of work, as you know, to try and garner interest in what we're doing in the university, trying to reach out, seeing the industry position, and also training students in what's happening in FinTech, where they can go. As a lot of people on this call know, there's a talent pipeline being launched by Dynamo, and is also part funded by Northumbria and Newcastle to actually do matching between students as well, which will feed into the UK Fin. The UK Fin is also linking to Ron Khalifa's work, because I was part of the Khalifa report. And now people might have heard of the CFIT Centre, so the Financial Innovation Centre, that's going to be a platform at first, but that is going to create these clusters. So we'll have a Newcastle Durham cluster and 9 others around the country. And the UK Fin network will be aligned to them as well. So we're working in conjunction with what Ron Khalifa will be pushing forward and helping to grow the UK sector, but I will also be plugging for the Northeast region as well and pushing that forward, so we don't miss out on any opportunities, etc.
And Karen, if people wanted more information about that, where would they go?
As I said, we're setting up to launch on the 1st of September. At the moment, there's a landing page, and that's it. So if you put UK Fin, so UK FIN network, you'll just see a landing page. But what we'll be doing over the summer is I'll be doing lots of social media, and we're getting actually a communications officer who'll be putting out promotion. And when the platform's built, we can actually see how it works. People will see how they can apply, what the different funding looks like. So it's watch this space for now, but it will be up and running by the 1st of September. It's quite exciting, and I'm hoping it's a real success. People will apply for it, and then we can ask for more funding from the research councils to keep it going.
And how can the Northeast business community help you with that? You talked about the habitual challenge of getting business and academia to work together. You know, if you could ask the businesses for one thing, what would it be?
I think to come with an open mind and a growth mindset, that academia is very different from industry. The usual problems I see is time to market. So fintechs want to get to market. Academics run sort of more in the R&D space, helping you to develop technology. And one area I'm passionate about is ethics by design and corporate digital responsibility. So ensuring that your technology will not cause a harm or an unintended consequence. So you really think about what you're doing around how you're using people's data and digital. As a very raw example, which is related, if people watched the Panorama program on the BBC last night about how algorithms can preempt and get people to buy certain things, it was quite a harrowing one, so I won't go into it, but it just shows the power of algorithms to actually subconsciously persuade people to do things they wouldn't necessarily do and get access to different things that could cause harm. So we have to really think carefully about how we design the technology to ensure that finance is safe, secure, and includes vulnerable people. And there's also an ISO standard coming out, well, it's just launched in May, called Consumer Duty. So I advise people when designing tech to look at that, because that is now a requirement under ISO to ensure that all your communication around finance is clear to vulnerable customers. So customers who have a range of drivers, and currently about 53% of the population are deemed under these vulnerable drivers, which include health, life events, resilience, and capabilities. So if you think of what's happened in lockdown, what's now happening with the energy crisis and cost of living crisis, a lot more people are going to become in a financially vulnerable position. So I'm asking industry to think about that, join us, and maybe do some work around how you can do inclusive design of technology, ethics by design. And then also we want to hear from you about what you want to design. But remember that academia is more the R&D side, not getting you to market. So we need to understand how each other works a little bit better. And then the coming together and bidding for work should become a lot more easy.
Excellent. Okay, I think we can switch back to Richard now. I think I'm seeing the 3 dots, Richard, which means we can probably hear.
I hope so.
Do you want to pick up, please?
Yes, I think it was showing the slides put me on mute, so I'll try again. If not, I'll hopefully Catherine can do something in the background, or I'll talk without showing the slides, but I'll have a go. It looks like you can still hear me.
Got you, yeah.
Perfect.
Go for it.
Okay. So innovation at Sage. So there's lots going on in this space, and in 15 minutes I've had to be selective in what I've chosen to talk about. But I thought I'd start with a bit of a story about what sort of where personally I've come to this point. So if I rewind 20 years, when I was back at university, particularly around payments and payroll, I had various jobs either in summer or part-time. And there was a time in one of my first jobs where we were all talking about what we're going to do this weekend, waiting to be paid. And then my colleagues I was with at the time said actually they'd already been paid and they were all going out that night. And to my dismay, I still hadn't actually received any money from my employer. And I soon realised what was happening is actually if I banked with the same bank as my employer, I got paid earlier. And that was really my first dabbling with trying to disrupt the industry. Not that it's really very disruptive. It just meant that I had to try and change bank accounts depending on what job I had. But with that in mind, I'd like to talk about what Sage is doing in the payroll space. And the agenda I'm going to talk through is it's a brief history of payroll, both at industry level, but also at Sage, an employee's perspective, what Sage is doing to democratize payments, and then where we're going to go from there. And what I'm hoping to prove is that paying employees doesn't just have to be a one-way journey. You can actually involve employees in that journey and take the overhead away from employers who are probably predominantly focused on just making sure their employees are paid on time and maintaining compliance with HMRC and tax and all those sorts of things. And more importantly, payments should be more of an experience, not just a journey. Or the ultimate goal is obviously to make sure payments land with the right person on time. But you can build it into a much bigger ecosystem of other activity that makes payments much more of an involved experience for people. So historically, payroll was probably more of a linear process, and the focus was definitely not on the employees, apart from the fact that employees wanted to be paid on time, and that was probably the most important thing. From an employee perspective, there was so much more going on in terms of making sure the payroll was created on time, approvals were in place, quick money was going to go to HMRC, money was going to go to other bits and pieces, but not much thought was really given to the end user, and the ultimate end user of any payroll is the person who's waiting to get paid. And within Sage, we offer it's around 60% of the UK payroll is run through Sage software. I'm extremely proud as well that all the work going on in the payment side of Sage is based in Newcastle. So the engineering team and the solution designers and the product team, and then also the payroll specific team, they're all based in Newcastle. I think it's a real credit to this community we've built that we can do some of this work and build on the processes and the innovation all collaboratively, all in one place. But if you go back and look at historically how people have viewed payroll, this is more from the employer's perspective. So starting on the left, you've got smaller businesses, and their primary focus is getting payroll right for the employees, and also for the company, making sure tax and the other bits and pieces are paid accurately and on time. Their main pain problem and main fear is of getting it wrong. And people only tend to get it wrong once before that starts causing all sorts of issues, and the memory of that hangs over every future payroll that's ever run. And the need there is more so about really needing to understand how payroll works, be guided by experts, but also make it easy. But again, it doesn't really cover the employee side. And if you ask any employee what's the most important thing about being paid or the payroll being run by a company, it's ultimately to get paid. So there's lots of other considerations in there, such as I need to be able to see pay slips and make sure that the money's gone to the right place, and if I've got a salary sacrifice things in place, or back to work or childcare vouchers, they're all getting done, and I can see that those payments have happened. But ultimately, the importance is that I want my money on time in a way that I want. And what we've been doing at Sage is developing different ways to enable those journeys for employers. So to put more power into the employees' hands, not take that power away from the employer, because obviously that's very important, but enable staff to really be able to decide how and when and what format they get paid. And we started that process by bringing in varying ways for employees to add their bank. So rather than have to go through a smaller business where you might have to go to your HR person or your payroll person, or it might well be the same person, and update bank details, we're allowing Sage customers employees to update their own information via portals. They can do that in one of two ways. They can do it instant verification using varying other third parties who do that verification. And that means you can bring up your bank and add your bank in a simple process. Or via manual verification, which is basically just typing in your details. And then that's available. And if you want to change it, you can change that. And if you want to add in more than one bank account and split your payroll, that's something they'll be able to do in the future. But it really is about making sure that employees can deliver that experience themselves. Not take the control away from employers, but just have that control themselves and not have to then concern themselves with speaking to their own office or their team or whoever that may be to actually make those things happen. But then once their bank is online, the most important bit is that they can choose how and when those payments are made. So it's important to remember that in the UK, it's quite a low percentage, but a percentage nonetheless doesn't actually have a bank account. So they still might have a job, but they can't get paid by a direct debit or another format. And if you look wider than that, so globally, it's around a third of the world doesn't actually have a bank. That doesn't mean they shouldn't have access to money or to receive money or to be able to make payments. So when an employee is paid via Sage, they'll get a notification say you've just received money from your employer. How would you like to receive that? And again, in the UK, we're predominantly focused on faster payments and backs and that type of payment. So people probably don't give it too much thought. But actually, would you rather be paid in a different format? Would you rather receive a check? Would you like to receive that check in the post? Would you like to have that emailed to you so you can print it off yourself? And more importantly, it opens access to other sorts of payment formats in the future, which I'll cover in a couple of minutes. But you can give customers this option. They can choose how and when to select the payment. So for example, if I was to pick a check and I wanted to print that myself, you could do that. So on the left here, we've got an example of a check that you could receive via email, print it off, and then you'd pay that in whichever way you wanted. In the UK, you could either take that to your bank and bank it via your online or mobile banking. One of the countries, you can take it to facilities where you can cash those checks for cash. Or more importantly, what this also allows then is access to other types of payment formats, particularly virtual cards. And people who aren't aware what a virtual card is, that allows companies to send a 16-digit card number virtually, so there's no physical plastic. And that means that card will sit there on a virtual platform of the person's choice. And they can access that in any normal way they would make a payment with a card. And in-person payment would have to be via Google Pay or Apple Pay, but it means they can credit that card into that wallet and use that. Or online, let's use the normal method for making a payment. But the important benefits of things like virtual cards is the security of that payment. So you no longer have a plastic card in your wallet you can lose or have stolen. The card will always sit there in a portal, and they can use this in any way they want. But it can't be stolen. It's more secure, and they can. Should they want to change a payment at any time, they can just recreate another 16-digit card number. And other people more are looking at this as well. So schemes, for example, are doing lots of work now to try and free up additional card numbers to allow customers to have more access to more card numbers. And it's something that's only going to gather more momentum. It's not predominantly used that much in the UK at the minute. It's more of a wider global piece of people using payments via virtual card, but it's something that is going to start accelerating. So that's the information we've got around innovation. And again, I'm really proud that this is being developed within the Northeast, within Newcastle, particularly the engineering team. And there's quite a large team working on this sort of innovation. And then the individual product teams in Payroll are taking this around the world. And then next steps, where we want to take this next is to start working with HMRC to try and enable better allocation of payments. And by better, I mean when a company makes a payment to HMRC or to their employees, that some of those are harder to tie up sometimes in the background. This is something we can work with other third parties, and there's lots of people doing work in this space already to try and improve that process. And lastly, enable payments to HMRC to be automated. So the ideal goal is for payments where possible to be automated within the Sage ecosystem to allow people to make those payments all from within one product. But I'm hoping within those whistle stop tour and a few minutes I've proven that paying employees doesn't have to be just a one-way journey. You can bring employees into that, and by doing that, you can take the pressure and pain away from your internal in-house payroll team, and give the employees some of the power back, enable them to decide how and when they're paid. It also takes some of the more onerous tasks away from internal employees, and payments can really be an experience, not just a journey. I'd like to take any questions on that if anybody has any.
Okay, well, we'll keep an eye out, Richard, and thanks for that. It's interesting that payroll wouldn't necessarily sort of spring top of mind awareness if you talk about FinTech, but it's a great example of where a manual process has been gradually digitized over the years, and now through a lot of these connected services, you can actually give it a much better employee experience. And I love the fact that you can print your own checks. When can I have it to do a check?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure but we'll keep an eye out for questions around that.
Yeah. Okay.
As well, Richard. Just while I'm on, we've got Wayne Bryant on the call. Apologies, Wayne, I didn't do an intro earlier before. Predominantly because you haven't got a speaking part as such, but you've got quite a big role to play because Wayne is the sort of the dynamite lead for the FinTech cluster. And again, if anybody today wants to sort of find out more about what Dynamo are doing in relation to the FinTech cluster, sort of link up with Wayne in the people area of the session and ask Wayne some questions and join up. Wayne, do you have any comments on what you've heard so far today?
No, as I say, hello everyone, and thanks for the introduction, Stu. So Wayne Bryant, I joined Dynamo in January this year. Long-standing background in technology transfer and intellectual property, projects in fusion energy, a lot of projects in medtech, but not so much in fintech. So I'm very much learning in the fintech side of things, but pleased to be great to hear of a lot of things going on in the region, and sort of I've worked with James previously on interviewing around that strategy he talked about. It all looks really good. It's really interesting, and just bear with me because I am quite fresh to it all, but great to meet anyone. I'm happy to chat to anyone about what Dynamo doing and the way I see things going forward and what I'm going to be doing. Please just come and have a chat with me.
Okay, thanks, Wayne.
Cheers.
And James, just sort of coming back to you. So obviously, you presented that sort of picture at the start, and you heard Karen talk about the sort of developments with UK Fin and some of the initiatives. The question I asked Karen about what can businesses do to make this move faster or be more engaged. What can businesses do to help with that strategy and to really sort of bring it to life?
But I guess the main thing is collaboration. So we did some internal benchmarking. There's a team at Whitecap. There's the three of us working on the Northeast project, and we subjectively compared some of the other regions in the north of England with the Northeast, and we find that there is a collaboration gap between fintechs and financial services in comparison with Leeds, which has got a very vibrant collaboration hub and mentality. So I guess what it needs is clear leadership of the fintech hub to implement the strategy alongside key actors like Karen and yourself and Wayne and key players like Richard from Sage, and they need to encourage the collaboration. And so if you think about it, if you have the clear leadership and then you do the collaboration, that'll lead to the two key resources which need to develop the ecosystem, which is funding and talent. So very simply, I think that the way this will play out, Stuart, to answer your question, is that we'll look to get a clear leader or leadership team for the initiative. I think that's something we're working on in the background. It's not just a statistical project, it's an implementation project. And we'll look to that team will look to get commitments from working together, and then that'll lead on to improvements in access to funding and tech talent. So that's the plan, in a nutshell, Stuart.
Yeah, and I think, James, I would sort of those words resonate because for the past few years, the whole purpose of Dynamo is to try and bring the region together through collaboration and through the cluster initiatives is where we've seen the most success, really. And I think to Karen's point, it's to trying to bring education to business and public sector with private sector and get everybody around a table trying to, work for the same agenda to make the Northeast a much more lucrative place for everybody and a great place to set up business and so on and so forth. I mean, again, Karen, in relation to what James has said in the collaboration space, I mean, how do you see this moving forward? It's probably an open question to everybody, really. How can we make collaboration really sort of sing from a FinTech perspective? Is it workshops? Is it, getting people to sign up?
Yeah, and I think it's awareness as well. I think there's a gap between awareness. There are a lot of people who know me in the Northeast, but there's a lot of people who also don't. And I think part of that is I've attended a lot of events from FinTech North and others that have been practitioner-led rather than academic-focused events. And I think similarly like that, when industry sees something that the university is putting on that would be of interest, we could also get collaboration there. For instance, last week we ran an event around cybersecurity and corporate digital responsibility, which Phil Jackman attended from Dynamo, and we had quite a few people from industry coming through and like trying to get connections into new companies like Arctic Wolf, etc., would be great as well for our students, as well as for us to learn as academics what's going on in the area. So I think it's back to collaboration. It's about raising awareness. It's about getting introductions from different people. Like I've introduced James to people, James introduced me to people. I've gone up to Scotland, I've gone down to London and gone to different events just to try and put the Northeast on the map and try to engender collaboration. But one of the good things I like about the FinTech network is I can't do it all. Not the academics at Newcastle can't do it all, but if we spread it across the nation and get it working, which will take time, these things don't happen overnight. And most people are time poor as well. So we have to realize that and find out ways of working that actually make that collaboration easier rather than making it more fraught, and should reduce some of the politics that go on around interacting in that space as well, and get rid of that and just make working relationships much easier.
Yeah, I think the words raising awareness are sort of easy to say and quite difficult to do. But
I think again, you've got technology to help you. We've got social media. I get students to do tweets and retweets and things like that. And once people know who you are, I've got pointers from people who said, "Oh, I met somebody at an event. They mentioned you in terms of FinTech," and then I put them in touch with others. Yeah. And yes, it's not easy to do. It's about social interaction and getting people to go. It is, one chunk at a time to get to the elephant. You're going to eat it one chunk at a time. It won't happen overnight.
And I would say to add to that, Stuart, I think when we're talking about collaboration and connecting people, we're fantastic at connecting people, but sometimes people are coming new into the industry, young businesses, and they haven't got the confidence to connect effectively. So that they're happy to connect and they're happy to, but if that sort of first connection isn't effective, it doesn't lead to collaboration. It leads to nothing, and then it goes away again, and you might be years waiting again to get that connection again. So supporting young businesses to effectively collaborate and create and connect effectively is really important.
I think I completely agree, Wayne. And one of the things from James's presentation, when you showed us the ecosystem slide, James, there's a lot of businesses on there that might not think the FinTech businesses, because the part of the supply chain to FinTech or the service in the FinTech sector. And it's how can we get this sort of message out to those businesses that say, I'm not a Sage, or I'm not a Newcastle Bund Society, or a Virgin Money, or an Atom Bank, but I'm still working in FinTech because I'm connected in some way, shape, or form. Is there a place for all of those people as well in the Dynamo cluster, Wayne and James?
Definitely, I would say certainly. I'll just say first, James. Absolutely, and coming new into sort of the Dynamo cluster, I want to use the legacy stuff that's been done to effectively move the cluster forward, but also I come with an open mind. You know what I mean? I don't come with set thoughts about the FinTech industry. I know not. The first thing I learned was meeting with James a couple of weeks ago, and James going through the strategy and interviewing me about it, and I had the best input I could. but I'm just absorbing at the moment, and that's a good time for me to take in everything and involve everyone.
Yeah, Stuart, I think it's a really good question, because those tech support companies at the heart of the collaboration, that's the lifeblood, right? They've got to win contracts with larger companies to be able to provide services. So they're central to it. But I mean, take a step back. You've got three sort of like drivers around it. One is macroeconomic development. That's a preserve of combined authorities and county councils. You've then got research and innovation, which is sort of Karen's preserve the universities, looking at bleeding edge research. And we've heard several of the local fintechs say they wanted proximity to universities and located in city centres next to universities. So you've got the innovation research angle, and then you've got the community angle. So that's the push and pull, is between building a community and a buzz between people. So there's physical evidence of that community. There's the cutting edge innovation and research. I mean, it's already being done in Durham, Sunderland, Newcastle, Northumbria, and Tees Valley, Teesside University. It's just lots of it's hidden, and the interaction between business and universities is hidden. And I guess lots of companies in the sector already interact with universities. Then at the macro level, this is the questions from the combined authorities and the local authorities: is what is the economic uplift? What is the GVA, number of jobs, and more and better jobs? So I guess it's very, very clear there's three sort of drivers, and all are valid. And some of them, I think you mentioned before, are just as Karen says, raising awareness of what's going on. And so if you raise awareness and build the community, then it'll inevitably lead to collaboration. So there's a push and pull. There's those through the strategy project who think it's all about the macroeconomic numbers and investment and jobs, and there's those who think it's to do with the community and the spirit and the drive. So we're trying to bring those elements together. Yeah.
Excellent. And Richard, from your perspective, obviously, Sage, massive employer in the Northeast and nationwide and worldwide. How can businesses like Sage help to drive collaboration in across the Northeast?
It's an interesting question, and a bit like Wayne, I'm relatively new to the fintech side of things. So I joined Sage just this year, and I came from the financial services sector. So I was at a large bank in the UK, and I think to a few points already, the awareness I think just probably isn't there, and I think something that Sage can help that awareness, with its network, it's enormous. And I think that's something we can definitely look to support more in terms of making that aware, and not just in the Northeast, in terms of the Karen's point, traveling down to London and doing more awareness outside of the local geography of what's actually going on in the Northeast and making people aware of what's available. I personally would love to work with other fintechs and more universities and colleges to try and bring some of that talent into the area. And talent's already here, just making sure they know what's actually available and stop them leaving. But for me, this has been a really interesting induction into Dynamo and what is available. But I think I'd love to participate in further conversations around, outside of this forum, what Sage can do.
That's a perfect segue, Richard. We're out of time, unfortunately, but it's been a great session. It's gone really quickly. But just on that, if anybody would like to participate in the fintech sector, contact Wayne. If anybody would like to find out any more information about anything we've talked about today, Karen, James, myself, yourself, Richard, please get in contact. And thanks to everyone who's joined the session this morning. And I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you and goodbye.
Thanks
Thanks a lot.
everyone.
Thank
Cheers.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.